Episode 10. Welcome, welcome.
Let's go.
All right. So today we have a podcast that is straight out of left field. Sterling recommended it. I have no clue where he found it, but it was great. Two guys I have never heard of before. And the podcast is Rage Against the Machine, Yuval Noah on surviving AI, the history of and the future of humanity. It's on the Rich Roll podcast, which I've never heard of once again. So this Yuval Noah guy, he is a artificial intelligence or AI scientist.
No. So he's the guy that wrote Sapiens and what was the other one? He had another bestseller. This is his third huge book. But his third book is about AI. It's all about AI. It's called Nexus. It just came out this year.
Yeah, so
But he's a historian or a philosopher more than a scientist. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I didn't know that. I had looked at his last book, that Nexus book. I knew it was kind of about the future of AI, where we're heading and whatnot. I assumed his background was computer science.
He definitely gives off those vibes, right?
Dude, yes, and he's so most of the time when I hear AI, it's used so much now, and there's so many it's so obvious when people don't know what it is, and he just was straight to the point, and we'll get into this more. But before we do, let's do ratings.
Okay.
I had it at 82.
Wow. I had 81. How about that?
Nice. Yeah, I don't. So
that's as close as we've ever been.
Yeah, it's so. It was a great podcast. I don't know why it's not higher. I feel like it's it's such a dry topic, just how in depth of how technical he kind of was.
Yeah, I would say
it's kind of dry, but man, it was one of the easiest ones I had to listen to over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It wasn't entertaining. There was no punchlines, right? You never laughed, but
you have
it was
to
really
listen.
good.
His voice is just it's the most nerdy technical voice,
and he can't say his H's. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
So the Rich Roll podcast is on my follow list. I forgot he's been on a couple of my favorite podcasts as the guest. And so I followed him just to kind of keep track because I liked his conversations. I'm pretty sure he was a big athlete slash financial bro, and then had a mental breakdown. I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but then his claim to fame was how he just dropped a financial career and started focusing on himself and that whole stint. But I think he's a good podcast host.
Yeah.
I think you
did a great job. Yeah, it says he's an ultra athlete, wellness evangelist, and best-selling author.
Yeah. How do we dive into this? What you got, Conley? Start us off with something.
So, I mean, what I mentioned in the intro there was that the buzzword of AI, and he just right off the bat goes into it. He had a great analogy of AI everything, like your toaster's AI, that's advertised, right? And they advertise it because it's it's automated, it knows when you're wanting coffee based on the time of the day or something, so they call it AI or whatever. He's like, no, a true AI learns, and what else was it, learns and creates on its own. So his example was a true AI coffee maker. I said toaster oven. I think, but a coffee maker would not only know when you wanted coffee, but say, based on everything else you like, I'm gonna make a new espresso, a new coffee for you, and it's gonna be, you're gonna love it because I know what you like. And it kind of shows you, to me, it pointed out the fluff that we see a lot when people use AI.
Right.
And it's people outside my field, they're like, oh, are you using AI? Is your company using AI? I was like, I mean, not really. When I think of AI, no. But yes, technically, from how it's advertised, I'm sure there's a bunch of different things that we could consider AI.
Right.
And I read a book. It's called How uh do I have it here? That's not up there. It was like artificial intelligence thinking like a human is what it's called. And the first chapter was basically describing how vague the term artificial intelligence is.
Mm.
One, because intelligence is hard to define. It's a big gray line. And so that's why everyone gets to just throw it around all the time.
Yeah.
And that's initially what stuck out to me with this podcast is like, oh, this guy is like very smart. And he's like telling you what the difference between true AI that's going to change the world is and what gets called AI all the time.
Yeah. Like just normal software engineering is now being, if it's predictive at all, it's now AI. Yeah. And it's going to get worse. There's no doubt about it. It's going to get worse. The more, our mom joins in the conversation, that vernacular is just going to get more diluted, as the populace kind of talks about it more. That's for sure. But yeah, you could tell he wasn't just like this reporter that came in to like he understands it. It was a good pot. Like I would recommend it if you want to learn more about AI. I would say go listen to this podcast. It's well worth the what is it, hour 45. The good, the bad, what do we do about it? They kind of hit a
Yeah.
good chunk of it.
If you consider yourself a technical person at all, I would listen to it. If you don't consider yourself a technical person, I would try to listen to it. I think it'd be good. I would imagine you'd pick up some stuff, but hopefully it would make somewhat sense to you. I'm sure it would.
Yeah, I really didn't look at it through that lens.
So the other thing that he went into after that was he likes to call AI alien intelligence because he said artificial intelligence comes from artifact, which means we are in control of. And he explained that true AI can create and learn on its own. And throughout the podcast, he gave examples of what he called AI. Let's see, I have a note here. Oh, so like social media algorithms. He was talking about how they're creating and learning on their own. And I didn't necessarily agree with that. I think they're very obviously manipulated and aimed by the people creating them, and they are very easily controlled. Now, in a sense of they give a command of, hey, make the most engagement, then it's going to learn that certain things get better engagement. So, yeah, it learns that on its own. But I thought that was I don't know. It made a lot of sense when he initially said alien intelligence as AI, but throughout the podcast, I felt like he kind of contradicted himself on that.
Yeah, I think where I really agreed with him on that one, and it was the part about intelligence isn't consciousness, and there's no reason to think those two are tied.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, well, so these AI companies, they have a huge incentive to either make the AI conscious or give it the appearance of being conscious, which is another interesting dilemma, right? But do you have, if you had to guess today, do you think the AI will ever gain consciousness?
I think it will be perceived as they have consciousness, and that's another term that's like it's so hard to define. I think it's more just if it seems conscious, then it is, you know?
Yeah, that's so like if they tell it to like act like a human, but it doesn't know why, it can't intuit why murder's wrong. It just knows all humans that people think are good people think murder's wrong. So I'm going to mimic that. It's going to be so hard to delineate between whether it's conscious or just a good mimic.
Yeah. I don't know if like I said, like I don't know if there's a way to decipher between them two, like because then you get the yeah, it's just like how do you define consciousness? He mentioned that it had to do with feelings, having feelings, like physical, mental feelings, whatnot. But I don't know. That seems like a very theoretical conversation, something that
Yeah.
I don't really pay much mind to because it doesn't seem like there's an answer there.
Do you think the AI will ever understand that it exists?
I would say so, and mainly because we're at like the this is probably overused too, but the start of the
The
exponential.
beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think anything's capable. Like, all these theoreticals are probably gonna happen. It's just a matter of time,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
I there's part of me that wants to hope they can't.
Me too.
Right?
He talks about that as it being like this. He explained of how all the leading edge people know this will end up in a or lead us into a worse world. Having these AIs like be super intelligent, but they're all like, if someone else does it, then it'll be a worse world. So everyone thinks that if they're
Mm.
AI makes it first, they'll have a better world.
That was a I love game theory. And I saw something the other day. It was very interesting. It was there's 1,000 people in a room. You can either take the blue pill or take the red pill. If over 50% of them take the blue pill, everyone lives. But if you take the red pill, you and your family are guaranteed to live. What do you do? And it turned into they it was brilliant because they turned it into a Twitter poll and the results were 62% picked red. So you could have like that's a prime example of game theory, right? Game theory actually tells you, pick red, look out for yourself. Everyone looks out for themselves. Everyone's fine, right?
Hmm.
But like those game theories are really wild when you talk about like nukes and gain of function research and AI with you know China.
TikTok's not
I don't
gonna.
buy that China has any regulations on gene therapy, right? They're trying, right? Why wouldn't they? When it's a matter of who's going to run the world, you take the right.
Yeah,
But
I don't think TikTok's gonna like any of the words we're using for this video. All of our videos are gonna be put straight
who
down.
cares? Who
Yeah,
cares?
I just thought it was funny.
Yeah. That that's one of the reasons I really like business school. Like when I was getting my MBA, a lot of those lessons is like you got to play out the game theory. Like if your competition does this, what do you do? And it was really those are fun things to like explore. But turn it back on you if you're in charge of the United States, and all of a sudden you're the czar of AI. Do you hold back at all, or do you go 100%? All gas, no brakes.
I mean, I think you have to go all in. Like you do want to be the one to control it and hopefully like give it the guidelines you think are necessary. Give it the safety guards you think are necessary. Not in the development process, but in the like rollout process of it. Like he mentioned, like if AI ever takes over, basically, like if it ever comes to a point of this dystopian world where AI does something crazy happens, it's a matter of humans not uh developing it safely. Like they're never going to break out of the sandbox unless we allow them to.
Yeah. So what? I mean, what would you say? Hey guys, go do your thing, but you got to come to me before you release it, or like you're the czar. What are you doing? What? How do you stop this or not stop it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you go full all in on development, but you worry about how it's going to be implemented.
Okay. So you figure out how to make AGI, but you don't let whoever figures it out just say, okay, now that I have it, I'm going to master the stock market. Or
I don't even know if that's I see because you can't like keep it solely to yourself, or else the next person is gonna they're not going to be too far
right,
behind.
right.
I do think like if OpenAI never went so out in the public with their LLM, all these other companies wouldn't be able. It seems like they have reverse engineered it and have been able to catch. So maybe that's the play. If you don't make it public, then people don't know about it, and they're behind the ball without them knowing. I don't know, man. I think you'd. There's a lot of details going on there.
This is one of the ones that's like, it's really interesting because you got China, Russia, you got your competition, then you got a cliff, right? Where if you do this wrong, humans aren't in charge anymore. It's like that. What's that game at the bar where you slide the puck across the table with the sand on it?
It's not shuffleboard.
Yeah, shuffleboard. And like you got to land it as close to the edge as
Yeah.
possible, but there's someone else trying to get closer, and it's only in this scenario if you go over the ledge, you might end humanity.
Yeah. And I've heard I was listening to Rogan with man, I can't remember who it was, some business CEO founder, but he was like, if we just had a government that AI could make the judgments on, I was like, whoa, 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 you gotta stop that right there, dude. I'm like, no, no, like that is scary. The thought that people think that they can just be okay with just the idea of that just in a conversation. Like that's something I would be just. I mean, like a conversation I was not intrigued in. If that came up, I'd be like, "What? How? Why do you think that would be good?"
So you're right, especially when it's the AI we know, right? That's just like
Yeah.
taking the data you put in. You know, they had a lot of these like scenarios where the bank might not give you a loan because the AI is deciding who gets the loans or not.
Hmm.
But the whole reason the bank would give that decision to the AI is because the AI would be better than humans. And it's always this like, do you want an AI telling you how to live? No. Do I want humans telling me how to live? No. Which one's worse? Maybe humans. So
Yeah.
like that bank, if it does a better job allocating capital and returning more, profits to its shareholders, and it doesn't feel good emotionally, but logically it's the right call. And that's kind of this whole, I mean, you're back to the, is it conscious? It's definitely going to be better at logic, right? So
Yeah.
anywhere where logic is what you want, it's going to be better. And maybe that's parts of government. I have a hard time believing it's all of the government, but
Yeah. Oh, my thing is like I don't know if you can. You're still. It seems inevitable to me that you're always be trusting the designer of that AI, even if it is the super intelligence that's learning on its own, if there are programmed in biases, programmed in whatever to manipulate its output, and whenever it's running, it's like, I don't like, how do you prove that the AI we're going to use for some part of the government was designed
fairly.
true? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you audit that as like a civilian? Like, how would you trust that?
Yeah, you have to have some sort of way for the people to say, we put you in charge, but we're taking that power away, right?
Yeah. I mean, just like every sci-fi movie, the AI comes out, but that company that developed it had a bad intention, and they wanted to make a lot more money, so they made the AI like somehow profit back to the company, but it's very subtle, and it didn't get found out till 100 years later. Like it's just like, obviously that's sci-fi, but like it's based on potential scenarios, and that seems very likely. Like there how these things work is so complicated, and when they process and create their output, it's very hard to figure out how they got that output. you know it would just be so hard to trust.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. The He gave an example about there's like, I think it was, I'm going to mess up which country it was in the Middle East, but they have a hijab law where ladies have to cover their face, and they already have cameras with AI software in them that automate the ticket process. And you could see how that would quickly become a scary big brother like society. But another part of me says, you know, what AI is going to give to, authority is the power to hold people accountable to the laws they create better, right? Like, I always go back to, the speed limit laws. Everyone speeds, almost everyone speeds, but that's okay. We're okay with that. And it's up to cops to choose when they give tickets out or not, as opposed to people really deciding what the actual speed limit is and enforcing it with cameras everywhere, right? And then no one would speed. I think it's just going to make it more important that the laws we create are the right ones. And my solution would be make less laws. Let the people decide how to act in their society.
Yeah, I think that's maybe too much of a perfect world. I mean, you're looking definitely at the.
Hey, go ask mommy, okay? I'm on a podcast.
But mom didn't do it.
It's okay. I'll do it later, okay, buddy? Love you.
You're definitely looking at the positive side of it. I feel like it's just too easy to abuse. Like that's what I'd be worried about. Like,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Right. If you have someone at authority that does not have your best interests at heart, they can do more to impact your life. Absolutely. I think it tells me it's even more important. Like right now, the government already impacts my life too much. But in this future, it's going to be even more critical that the government and the laws they create.
yeah,
So to pivot a little bit, they talked a little bit about intimacy being the new attention. I thought this was a really, really good point where, right now we're okay, good job, bud. You did it.
No, Max did it.
Okay. Thank you. We're in the attention economy, right? The most powerful people in the world.
I get it because he wanted the attention. That's
Yeah, that's
nice.
right. That's right. But in this next world, it might be we're in an intimacy economy. No, go play, dude. Go play. You might have some editing on your hands after this one.
I'll try to remember. It's no big deal.
Well, we were talking about the intimacy. Like, do you think they have a good point there with the intimacy being the next attention?
Oh man, I didn't really. I must not have paid attention to that part. I must have been thinking about something else. Why did he say that intimacy is going to be the next attention? Fill me in.
Well, like, so in this in this world where he was talking about how there's all this information out there and not all of it's good information, and the way people are going to sort through that is they are going to, or the way companies are going to combat that is by gaining your trust, by having an intimate connection with you. I feel like I'm not doing a good job, and maybe they just need to go listen to podcasts, but I really like that point, and I had never thought about intimacy as key to persuading people, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. So was that in the part when he was just talking about, like, he gave an example of political campaigns? You can't really win a political presidential campaign with 100% facts all the time. Like, he's like, you have to tell a story. You have to make stories out of the information and like almost create a fictional message based in truth, but not 100% truth.
I think it was in that same part, but it's not quite what I remembered, but it's all right. So, but while we're there, I had do you like all the information we have nowadays? Or do you think it's too much like he does?
I don't think it's too much. I would rather have too much than not enough. So I think a great example. Have you seen those short videos or like TikTok videos where it's like they're making fun of like listening to health information on TikTok? It's like, well, I can't use my toothpaste anymore, and then I can't use this. The replacement to the toothpaste, I can't use that. The replacement to that, I can't use that because they said this, and it just goes forever. And he's like, well, I'm like not eating anymore. It's like that's where they're at. So yes, like you can definitely go down rabbit holes where there's too much information. You can't tell what's true. I think that's where you really just have to try to be an independent thinker, test things out on your own. I think especially with like the health stuff and stuff, like just testing it out, like doing kind of a scientific method of does this is it true for me? Like from the side effects or does it work for me? And that applies to not only like health stuff, but like knowledge in general. Are you talking to like do you hear something and do you keep it to yourself, like information about a political campaign or something? Do you hear it and keep it to yourself and just take it as truth? or do you go talk to people? And do those people reason with you? And do you get back to the center and the truth? And I think that's kind of the importance of like community and close friends and peers, because it kind of all balances out. That information kind of the truth kind of fizzles back to the top once you kind of go through your network of people.
Yeah. The wisdom of crowds, essentially
Mhm.
that. Yeah, it's just funny. The last time I was home, I think we said something about we don't do that anymore. It has red dye in it. And Hunter's like, Hunter said, everything's gonna cause cancer, so who cares? There's definitely that sentiment out there with all this, revolution and the democratization of information.
Yeah, to go off to the side on that, there's one thing that I really like, and it's that like the stuff you put in your body, like obviously you can't be 100% like all these non-toxic stuff all the time, be like the perfect diet. Right? Your body's kind of a filter. So if you can filter stuff before it gets to your body, you're just gonna be better off. So like that's how I think about it. It's like it's not gonna kill me, but it's gonna clog my filter up. And so the more I can filter before it gets to my body is the better I'm gonna operate long term.
Yeah, that's
That's
funny.
my short.
Clog's always a good word. I'm more like you have a certain percentage chance of getting cancer, right? Statistically, everyone does. Maybe 1 in a million, you know, in a perfect environment. You drink plastic every day, that goes up to 2%, right? And if you get cancer after drinking plastic every day, is it because you drink plastic every day? No. But did it 1,000 fold increase your chance of getting it? Yes. And like that statistical way of thinking, I think it's the best way to use this massive amount of information that's everywhere.
It's very game theory,
Yeah.
like what route's gonna lead to the best potential outcome.
Right. And what trades are worth it, right? Because, not ingesting plastic nowadays comes with a cost, both,
Mhm.
actual dollar cost, but at the same time, it comes with, you got to go learn what has it. You got to go take steps to change your habits. I mean, it takes a big commitment. And
Yeah.
those, risk reward decisions are everywhere.
So, for example, if we're just talking about health, obviously the internet's flooded with health information. But if the internet had less information, don't you think we'd be worse off?
Yeah, it's funny. So we agree on this. The whole time he was saying, you know, truth is cheap or truth is more expensive than fiction. I didn't like that part. We had a saying back in Palmdale, or at least I had a saying: "There's no such thing as bad data, only bad engineers." Even if the data is false, like you could say, "Okay, why is my data false? Oh, I have a bad sensor, or I put the sensor in the wrong spot, or for some reason it's not representative," and you can adjust. And I think we need a new line, something like there's no such thing as bad information or misinformation. There's only, like what goes wrong when you have misinformation is people use it to draw a conclusion
Hmm.
as opposed to seeing it as misinformation and learning, because if a politician's lying to you, that's bad information, but it teaches you who to trust and who not to trust,
Hmm.
right? So just because it's bad information doesn't mean it's not good for you.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily bad information, it's how it's interpreted, right?
Right.
Because
All
it's good
information
in the
is
fact
that.
that,
It's
yeah,
information.
it's
Yeah.
good in the fact that you figured out that person's a liar or is not knowledgeable. So this guy is very smart. One of the really cool things that I I I probably can't even talk too well on is he explained political systems at in terms of how they distribute information.
Yeah. That was
Like,
interesting.
it was so cool that he could like he kind of painted like a really clear picture of like if you look at how information flows in different political systems that you can like you can determine the difference between them. And when you think about systems in that way, or political systems in that way, it's kind of cool. I don't know what I'd really do with that information, but it was
Yeah.
cool that he could paint a clear, like it made sense. Like if I were trying to explain it, I couldn't do it. but he did.
Yeah, so when that part came up, it was like that's the perfect example of why he's had 3 bestsellers. Right? He's great at just like thinking this, looking at a different lens at normal things that everyone is used to. It was, yeah, that part was really cool.
Yeah, and he also had a one liner, I think, after it or before maybe. And he said that what separates humans from other animals is their ability to work together and use information. I thought that was like just a pretty cool message. And he
It is
explained it as we as humans, he gave examples of how like even on a world scale we're working together.
right.
We have to trust that the food we eat, it probably went across hundreds of hands. We have to trust all those people.
Mm-hmm.
We're trusting people every day on the road. We're trusting people not to act in a harmful way at the grocery store. We're trusting cops to do their jobs. We're trusting it like humans are just. It's kind of really cool when you look at it at that lens of we're all humans, and us being able to work together is why we're special. Not why we're special, but kind of what can really separate us apart.
I think it's definitely what makes us successful. And I liked it because they don't often frame it like that. Like they say we have a world economy, right? We're a global economy. But then they say China's our enemy. But we use stuff from China every day. They use stuff from us every day. And no one ever says, like, as humans, we're all working together,
Mm-hmm.
even with those that we call our enemies. And he's also talked about, like, how we are progressing. I thought that was interesting when we circle all the way back to the beginning, where it was, what would you do with AI? Would you trust that we're going to make it through this, or would you try to slow it down? Part of me wants to go because, yeah, I see the disaster scenarios, but we've been here before on other technologies. Maybe the risk and the reward are greater, and that's going to keep happening as we go up this technological curve. But we're fine. We made it. Were we perfect? No. A lot of people died during the Black Plague, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we rushed into cities. Everyone got sick. People died. But I wouldn't go back and undo that decision to form cities, right? I think our superpower, I like the working together part. I like it. But I think our superpower is we can adapt, right? We do something new. You get good and the bad. You try to get rid of the bad and keep the good. And then you do it again.
Yeah, and I think we adapt because we can work together, or
Yep,
else
that's true.
we'd all be dead.
That's true.
Man, there's a lot of topics that you brought up, but one. So I don't. Do you want to go the dystopian route of AI, or do you want to go to something else you talked about?
What's the something else? There's not much to
Uh,
propose.
it was a tool. It was the Notebook LM he was talking about. So it was about, I think it was like
Let's
three
do that
quarters.
one.
It was 3/4 away through the podcast. He was talking. It might have been Brian. One of them mentioned the app Notebook LM, and I actually went and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
tested it out.
Yeah, that was the host.
Did you test it out?
I didn't.
So with our recordings for our Riverside, we don't have the premium subscription, so we can't get the transcription with our names on who said what. But
Mhm.
you can YouTube and get the transcription, but it doesn't have like who said what. It's just the words. So like I put our transcription into Notebook LM, and I could ask it like, what were the takeaways of the podcast? What podcast were the two hosts talking about? And it would answer them. It was really cool.
That's cool.
I really wanted to. I think if we had the premium subscription and get those transcriptions from all our episodes, it could be a really powerful tool on like looking back through our discussions.
Wow.
And also on top of that, this is how I always imagine being able to use AI in my development work. I want to have a local large language model that knows every single line of code that I'm working on, that has all the help documents for how to use our software and all like the customer support conversations. It has information on what we had talked about in our meetings, and our development decisions in our meetings, it knows everything. You know how smart that would be if you gave it all.
That's your competition. Quickly, I mean, then we get back to the conversation like, are our kids going to go to college because is AI doing everything? Like that is the most terrifying part about AI for me.
Yes, but my take is, do I want to be at the company that's doing that? Hopefully, and I'm obviously I don't want to be the one getting cut.
Right.
If I believe it, I have to be a top performer. If I think that is, I've said it for the longest time. That's going to be the first wave of AI that happens that I witness, that I'm a part of. I think that's going to be on a large scale, but it's going to be AI as like a development tool, at least in my industry.
But who
And
gives that to you? Is
what
that like Microsoft handing you a chat GPT?
I think that's the company getting a.
That's not your company, right?
I think the first wave would be each company having their own.
Really?
So not their own LLM. They're not developing their own LLM. So like for example, ChatGPT has an enterprise license. And with the enterprise license, they offer fine-tuning models. And this is basically what a fine-tuned model is you have a large language model that can process languages and have discussions, but the fine-tuning part of it is providing it with all this proprietary information.
How do you do that with I have a meeting next week where we're going to make a big important decision? How does that get to the model? If everything's got to be trained.
So
Like how
I
does it
think
get to be live? How does it
yeah.
use live data?
So that's a good question, and I probably am not the best person to answer it, but I can see how it would be easily possible. For example, like when you are having a conversation with these large language models, it's called the context window, and that's like in your current conversation, it is looking through that whole conversation
Yeah.
to know exactly what to say now. So like these new informations, like the meetings, the discussions, those would be in this context window. But like the documentation and maybe the software aspect, at least software that's not going to change for the short to long term, those can be in the trained part of the model.
Gotcha.
I know it's possible. How it's going to be done, TBD.
That sounds like hard drive space versus RAM space.
That's kind of how I think about it too. It's just the matter of efficiency and what's going to work best because you are going to be dealing with a lot of information if you're putting meeting notes in, and that's actually what David Sachs' company is doing. They have a it's a so they're not. I don't know if
Is
they're
it one of the companies he's invested in? He doesn't
it's
have a
one.
company, does he?
I think he's actually like on the
On the board.
board. He's involved in it, but they're doing it at like so like Microsoft Teams. They're kind of doing it at that level to where
Which one does
they're doing all the meetings through that like Teams app, and that's how it's going to get context there. It sends out summaries of your meetings, and then like it has context of your like documentation of the software as a service.
right?
So it has context. Now that one doesn't sound like it has actual code knowledge, so it's not like helping in development. That's helping like really streamline the communication process and knowledge availability process. Like so you're
Right.
not go look at a document explaining a subsystem if you have a question about it, or you're not going to have to go look at the code to see the answer of how that process works. Hopefully you'll be able to figure that out through like the either the chatbot in that software or like through the meetings discussion summary and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see a future where, or at least a near future, where there's a bunch of different little AIs to do little things. They each
Well, I
have
think
their
that's
own
the first wave. I think that's the first wave.
right
I
until
think
they
coming waves.
pass over that mountaintop of AGI, right? And you
Yes,
could have one that can do everything.
that is what's misunderstood, and that's why AI gets thrown around so much. I think part of AI being thrown around so much is you hear these crazy things about what AI can do, and then someone asks why how your calculator app's using AI. It's like, well, it doesn't. Like it's not. It's the calculator app isn't using. It's not doesn't have this powerful AI in it. I don't know if that made sense.
I mean, what I think after this conversation is the word AI is just going to be a cluster. And you might as well, like, there's certain words you need to, their meaning is important. That's one of the ones just like, let everyone use it however they want. And then we'll get into the nuance if we need to.
You could probably replace most people's use of the word of AI as like software.
Yeah, software engineering, right?
Yeah.
Especially that calculator. It's engineering to where it's got a set number of inputs and a set number of outputs, and it already has figured out.
You got something here?
Well, I got probably my favorite point. So I want to save it to the end
You
unless you
still
have
haven't
something
talked
else.
about your favorite point?
No, this is so. If you had to guess whether those guys were progressive or conservative, what would you guess? And I'm not setting you up.
I mean, you would think from how they think through these situations, I would think they'd be nowadays conservative.
Wow. That was not what I was expecting. Like normally when you hear two like highly educated people talking like this, you assume progressive. But that's kind of beside the point. The point I want to talk about like is my first thought was these guys would be labeled progressives. The left is often progressives, the right is conservatives. But those words, much like AI, have lost their meaning.
Dude, that's so funny because that's exactly what my whole thought process was. I was like, well, progressive means you're like progressing towards the future, but that's not what it is anymore. So I was like,
Right.
conservative.
Right. And so like that whole podcast, they were mainly talking about conservative things. How do we put limiters on this technology that could change it for the worse? That's what conservatism is. You're trying to conserve our present state. Progressives see the bright future and they say, let's push towards it. And there's that good push pull balance right in the middle, ideally, where you're still making progress, but you're not going to throw away your whole society doing it type of thing.
So are they both like outspoken conservatives then?
No, I don't honestly think I've heard either of them have political views, to be honest. But I just, the whole time I was thinking that, like, where do I stay on this progressive conservative timeline or spectrum? Spectrum's a better word there. And I think in this topic, I'm more progressive. I think there's more good. I think people can adapt to the bad that comes. Part of me, maybe it's because I'm American and will probably end up on top. That's probably part of my bias. I mean, if I'm just being honest, but I think I landed about 75% progressive here. But my main point is I want to take those words back. The politicians don't get to use that shit anymore. The news doesn't get to use the shit. We are going to use progressive and conservative as they were meant to. I decree it right now.
I would love that. It would clear up the information, all the information that's out there.
If I hear someone use it wrong, I'm going to jump down their throat.
All right, I like that. I'll have to look up the definitions and make sure that when I correct someone, I'm spot on. I have a good idea, but maybe my definition can be a bit skewed from everything I've consumed.
I was passionate about that, but that was my last big one. You go ahead, Conley. You got anything else?
Whenever I have millions of viewers, that's gonna takes like that to have a big impact.
Sterling decree.
Nothing. I think the other two notes I have are a little bit too much to dive into at this point. One was he compared like kind of like artificial intelligence. It doesn't have to always do things the way we do to get to the same output. For example, he was like explaining how we design planes after birds, but they don't fly. So that was a quick note. I thought it was a very good point.
Yeah.
And helping you understand, you might not always understand, or it might not seem correct how it's getting there, but it can get there a different way, and to kind of keep an eye out for that with AI developing like down the road.
Yeah, there's different evolutionary paths you can take to come to the same point, like flying in that example. You can fly by feathers and flapping your wings, or you can fly by squeezing air to a little tube so hot that it comes out fast and you fly. Right?
That's a good breakdown. You
That's
must
what
be like
airplanes are.
an engineer or something. The other small note that I think we could talk about forever, so I don't know if we should, is he explained that companies, I hope I'm getting this right, companies by law are treated like persons, like people. And
Yeah,
therefore,
Citizens United ruling.
yeah, so therefore, a company could be made up of AI, just in general terms. I'm sorry, I'm kind of being, I'm
Well,
doing,
under U.S. law, corporations have the same right. Well, have rights, right, including political donations. So a company that is an AI could donate, right?
yeah,
That was kind of the example he had.
they can partake in the stock market and they can donate to political campaigns to whatever they see, whatever that AI determines is what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do with that information? Is that
Well,
something that we're
I
just be okay with?
I would love to get rid of Citizens United right now for other reasons, so we can just throw all the money out of our politics.
Because
Because
it seems like all the worry about AI, and we're like worried about slowing the development of it. Why don't we consider how our laws will play with AI
it's like, so our lawmakers are incentivized to keep that law, right?
for companies' sake?
I mean, show me the incentive, I'll show you the result, right? If I'm pick your politician and Boeing comes up to me and says, I will contribute $20 million to your fund, to your PAC, so you can do all the campaigns in the world to keep you in office, which is what you want to do, so you can keep doing your insider trading and make millions. All you got to do is once you get there, there's this little bill going on about whether or not we're allowed to dump the excess jet fuel in the swamps. Just tell the EPA to shove it. Okay, $20 million, right? They if that gets taken away, then the politicians can't do that. But who can take it away? The politicians. We were kind of trapped. But you know what? I was rather pessimistic going into the election. I thought Trump would win, but I wasn't sure he was going to because I didn't trust that the system was fair. And I don't think it's perfect, but I think we still do have a democracy where if you get enough groundswell, and it takes a lot, it's sad that it takes so much energy to, we'll see how much change we get. I don't think we'll get a ton of change. I think we're going to be better off than the alternative. It takes, but the system still allows for the people to say, we don't like Citizens United. If they care about it enough, we can change it.
I think going back to our earlier topic, I think this whole like the election things is a great example of how information flows. So like in 20, like throughout 2016 to now, we just got flooded with information. Short form content like TikTok and YouTube Shorts just changed how the internet's like interacted with. People really stopped using TVs. We're on all this short form content, getting a lot more information just thrown at you faster and faster and faster. At first, it was like, what is true? What is true? Like it felt like everyone had a different understanding of what the truth was for like just about every topic. And
You think that's coming back? You think
for
that's
me, I feel like the dust is kind of settled on that.
interesting?
Like this year, I feel like, and maybe that's just me consuming the content, but it feels like other people are starting to be on the same page as me, like what I'm saying. So that tells me that there's more a consistent consensus of truth, of knowledge.
Yeah, it does. Well, yeah. That's really interesting, Conley, because, it's just, I'm programmed to think not everyone agrees on what is true anymore. And I haven't stopped to consider, like, has the dust settled? Like you said, we had this big switch up in media, and now we're getting used to it. Like, are we done not having any idea what truth is?
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And I think we're on the verge of another huge change in how much information we get because this wave of information of short form content was generated by humans. There's going to be another wave, and it's probably already kind of started to happen, but it seems like AI generates not as high quality content. But in the future, AI is going to be able to generate quality content. And then we're going to have this huge boom of information everyone's consuming, and everyone's going to be consuming their own tailored information.
Yeah, it's going to be different. That's true.
Yeah, and that's going to be the next wave that we get hit with. And it's a matter of time till whatever AI tools are creating that content that's just as good as humans.
I just had like a rogue thought where it's like you have this custom tailored AI. It's exactly what you like on TV, and
It's going to happen.
you don't tell anybody because it's so fucked up. You're like embarrassed by like the AI really knows you.
Yeah.
If someone leaks like, oh, this dude, you should see the AI it generates.
That's something that is, it seems so sci-fi and far reach, but like what, 5-10 years till you hop on to play a video game on your PlayStation that no one else has because AI just generated it for you.
Right.
Because it saw all the content you've been watching. It knows what mood you're in. It knows what you want to play, and you go play it. It's in a world where everyone's consuming their own personalized content. That's scary because the dust isn't ever going to settle if that's how information's distributed.
Right. The cool thing is we will be alive. Like we can make these predictions now, but technology is moving so fast. Like we can come back in 20 years and say, I got this right, I got this wrong. This is what actually happened. Like that will happen before our kids are out of high school.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and man,
We're gonna have a lot to talk about, Conley.
and we're talking about important, like it's important things. Like AI is such a buzzword, but it's so important. It kind of it just dilutes how important it is.
It's like one of those points in history where everything after it's different, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like this is year 0 of AGI, right? You might as well reset the calendar because it's not going to be the same after this stuff is out.
I think a big thing too is why this conversation we just had in this past like 5 minutes doesn't get talked about is once you get over the age of 20, anyone I talk to doesn't really want to talk about this. They don't want to think about this world.
You need to get more nerdy friends.
Maybe over the age of 30. But like
that's why we have to do this. Because there's not a lot of nerds out there.
There's a lot of nerds, but people just don't I feel like
not geeks. I'm not talking about geeks. I'm talking about nerds. There's a difference. Nerds are better. Geeks are just weird.
Not mutually exclusive.
That's true. Well, welcome to the nerd family, Conley. All right, takeaway. Let's wrap this.
My takeaway is going to be to stay on my toes. Stay consuming what's going on with AI. So I feel like I'm in the know and I have an idea of what's going on. But then also implement that into my career. It's something I've already thought of and been thinking of. I know you're thinking of. But like with these new developments, make sure you're going to have a job in 10 years.
That's mine too. Like it just makes me think like if you're not in one of those 5 companies that has a real shot of making AGI possible, what are you doing? Like, yes, it won't happen overnight. We maybe have 20 more years. Maybe after AI is out, we get this universal basic income and all of our lives get better. But until then, until I know that, when I look at my future career, my current company is not going to figure it out. Nor will they be the first to implement it in our industry. It worries me. It really worries me.
Yeah. I think that's probably why we both like this podcast so much.
Yeah. It was a good one. It was really good. And if you're still with us, go listen to it. This is one of the ones where they did a much better job explaining the difficult topics. Well, it's worth the 2-hour listen.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's episode 10.
Follow-up podcast.